Some moments don't announce themselves. They don't come with a warning. No dramatic music. No slow motion. They just hit you, quietly, suddenly. And before you even realize what happened, everything has changed. This was one of those moments. And it started, like most painful things in my life, at a family dinner table. Easter Sunday at Grandma's house. The kind of day that looks perfect from the outside. Warm April sunlight coming through lace curtains. The smell of roasted lamb and fresh bread filling every corner of the house. 14 people packed around one long table that had seen 30 years of this family's happiness, grief, arguments, and everything in between. I had driven 2 hours to be there. I almost turned around 3 times on the way. Because I knew that the moment I walked through that door, the questions would start. The looks. The careful silences that said more than any words could. 3 months had passed since I quit my job. And in this family, 3 months was more than enough time for everyone to form an opinion they were barely managing to keep to themselves. And they had opinions. Trust me. Mom had pulled me aside at the door, squeezed my arm and whispered, "You okay, sweetheart?" In that tone. You know that tone, the one that isn't really asking if you're okay. The one that's actually saying, "I'm worried about you and I don't know how to say it without starting a fight." Dad had nodded at me from across the room. Just a nod. Nothing else. My father, the man who had worked the same job for 31 years without a single complaint, who believed that stability was the highest form of self-respect. He didn't know what to say to me anymore, so he said nothing. My aunt smiled too brightly. My cousins asked careful, surface-level questions about what I was up to these days, and then quickly changed the subject when my answer wasn't satisfying enough. And Marcus, my older brother Marcus, had said nothing to me yet, which, if you knew Marcus, was somehow worse than anything he could have said. Marcus was 34. Senior software engineer at one of those companies with a trendy one-word name and a glass office building downtown. He had the salary, the apartment, the car, the LinkedIn profile with 400 connections, and a profile photo where he was wearing a blazer over a t-shirt like he'd carefully calculated exactly how smart but casual he wanted to appear. He was good at his job. I'll give him that. But somewhere along the way, the job had stopped being something Marcus did, and had become something Marcus was. His entire identity, compressed into a job title and a salary bracket. I used to understand that. I used to be exactly the same way. Until it broke me. Here's what nobody at that table fully understood about why I quit. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't a quarter-life crisis or burnout from working too hard or any of the other comfortable explanations people reach for when they don't want to sit with a real answer. The real answer was this. I had spent 2 years working for a manager who made me feel worthless every single day. Subtle things mostly. The kind of cruelty that leaves no fingerprints. Never praising work publicly, only criticizing it. Excluding me from meetings I should have been in. Saying things like, "I just worry you're not cut out for this pace," in a quiet voice, like he was doing me a favor by being honest. 2 years of that. And I had stayed. I had stayed because I thought leaving meant he was right. I thought leaving meant I had failed. I thought leaving meant that everyone, Marcus, Dad, every person who had ever doubted me, would be proven correct. So I stayed until the morning I sat in my car in the parking garage, engine running, and realized I couldn't make myself go inside. I sat there for 45 minutes. Then I drove home. Resigned by email that afternoon. And for 3 months, I had been carrying that story alone because I didn't know how to explain it to people who had never felt it. People who would hear I quit because my manager was unkind and think, but everyone has bad days at work. Everyone has difficult bosses. You push through. That's what adults do. So I said nothing. I sat at that Easter table, surrounded by my family, more alone than I had felt in years, and I said absolutely nothing. The meal started quietly enough. Grandma had made everything from scratch, the way she always did. The lamb was perfect. The bread was still warm. Someone poured wine. Someone else made a joke about Uncle David's new haircut, and the table laughed, and for about 20 minutes it almost felt normal. And then Marcus cleared his throat. He did this thing when he was about to say something he considered important, This small, self-satisfied clearing of the throat, like he was calling a meeting to order. I had noticed it my whole life. It used to make me laugh. It didn't make me laugh anymore. "So I have some news," he said, picking up his wine glass with the casual confidence of someone who already knew the announcement would land well. "Got the promotion officially confirmed this week. Senior engineer to lead engineer. Biggest pay bump of my career." The table responded exactly the way he wanted it to. Mom gasped and clapped. Dad nodded slowly, the deep nod he reserved for things he genuinely respected. Aunts congratulated him. Cousins asked questions. The energy in the room shifted entirely toward Marcus, like a spotlight swinging across a stage. He smiled and absorbed all of it. And I cut a small piece of lamb and put it in my mouth and chewed and looked at my plate and thought about nothing at all. The trick I had learned for getting through moments like this. Go blank. Be nowhere. Wait for it to pass. But it didn't pass. Because Marcus wasn't finished. He leaned back in his chair. That specific lean, the one that meant he was about to say something he'd been saving, and looked around the table with an expression I can only describe as masterclass-level smugness. "Honestly," he said, "I'm just grateful I found my path early. Tech isn't for everyone. Takes a really specific kind of discipline. A certain type of mind that can handle the pressure." He paused. Perfectly timed, like he'd rehearsed it. Not everyone's built for it. And that's okay. Most people just have to find something more suited to them. He still didn't look at me. He didn't have to. Because every other person at that table did. 14 people. And in the space of 3 seconds, at least 9 of them glanced in my direction. Some quickly, some longer. With that specific expression that sits somewhere between pity and discomfort. The look that said, "We all know who he's talking about." I felt my face go hot. That particular heat that starts at your neck and climbs up slowly. The kind you can't control no matter how hard you try. Kept my eyes on my plate. I pressed my fork down against the lamb. I breathed through my nose. "Do not cry," I told myself. "Do not you dare cry at this table." The silence stretched. Someone coughed. Someone else reached for the bread. And I thought, this is it. This is the moment. Nobody is going to say anything. Marcus is going to win this one the same way he's always won. By making everyone too uncomfortable to push back. And I'm going to sit here and absorb it and drive home alone tonight and cry in my car, and that will be that. I had already accepted it. That's the thing I want you to understand. I had already accepted it. And then Grandma put down her fork. Not dramatically. Not with anger. Just set it down. The small, quiet clink of metal against ceramic. In 30 years of Easter dinners, I had never once heard that sound mean anything. Tonight it meant everything. The table felt it before anyone understood why. That shift in atmosphere, like the air pressure changing before a storm. Conversations that had been quietly resuming just stopped. Eyes moved toward the head of the table, where Grandma sat with her hands folded, looking at Marcus with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Not anger. Not disappointment. Something quieter and more devastating than either of those things. Clarity. "Marcus," she said. Just his name. Nothing else. But the way she said it, calm, unhurried, like she had all the time in the world, made him sit up slightly straighter without realizing he was doing it. "Yes, Grandma." She looked at him for a long moment. The kind of look that sees through everything, through the blazer and the title and the LinkedIn profile and the carefully constructed confidence, and finds the boy underneath all of it. "What have you built?" she said slowly. "That will last." Marcus blinked. "I'm sorry. Your career. Your promotion. Your title." She said each word like she was placing it carefully on the table between them. "Tell me, when you are gone, what will remain of it?" Marcus laughed. That nervous laugh people do when they're hoping humor will dissolve tension. "Grandma, that's a bit heavy for Easter dinner." "Your sister," Grandma said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The whole table went completely, absolutely still. "Your sister walked away from something that was slowly destroying her." Grandma's eyes moved to me. And the gentleness in them, the complete absence of pity or judgment. hit me somewhere so deep I had to look away. Do you have any idea how much courage that requires? Do you understand what it costs a person to choose themselves when everyone around them is telling them to stay? Marcus opened his mouth. I am not finished, Grandma said. He closed it. I have lived 79 years. I have watched people spend their entire lives in rooms that were killing them because they were too afraid of what people would think if they left. I watched your grandfather do it. I watched myself do it, for longer than I am proud of. Her voice stayed perfectly level. Not angry. Not sad. Just true. Your sister did something that takes most people a lifetime to learn, if they ever learn it at all. And you sat at my table on Easter Sunday, and used it to make yourself feel larger. The silence that followed was unlike any silence I had ever heard in that house. Uncle David had stopped chewing entirely. Cousin Priya's fork was suspended halfway between her plate and her mouth. Mom had her hand pressed flat against her chest. Dad was staring at the tablecloth. Marcus's face had gone through approximately 4 different expressions in the last 30 seconds and had landed somewhere between shock and something that looked, for the first time in a long time, like genuine shame. He opened his mouth once, then closed it, then looked down at his plate. Now, Grandma said, picking her fork back up with complete composure, someone please pass me the bread. And let us talk about something that is actually worth talking about. Nobody defended Marcus. That was the part one kept coming back to later, replaying it alone in the dark. 14 people at that table. People who had, for 3 months, been tiptoeing around me with careful questions and worried looks. People who had let Marcus's comments land without response at a dozen family gatherings before this one. Not one of them said a word in his defense. Not one. Marcus ate the rest of the meal in silence. Didn't look up much. Laughed too hard at one joke near the end, the way people do when they're trying to act like nothing happened. Left early. Work stuff, he said, already reaching for his jacket, and was gone before the dessert was fully on the table. The door closed behind him. And the room, I swear to you, exhaled. Later that night, I found Grandma alone in the kitchen, washing dishes the way she always refused to let anyone help her do. I picked up a dish towel and stood beside her without asking. We washed in silence for a while. Then she said, without looking up from the sink, "You know I did it too. When I was 31. I looked at her. Did what? Left. She handed me a wet plate. Your grandfather had a plan for my life. Very detailed plan. A good plan even, he wasn't a bad man. But it wasn't my plan. And one morning I woke up and understood that if I didn't leave that plan, I would disappear inside it. What did people say?" Yes. She smiled. Small, certain, completely at peace with a decision made nearly 50 years ago. Everything Marcus said about you. And worse. Did it get better? She turned and looked at me then. Really looked at me. It became, she said carefully, exactly what I made it. Which is the most frightening and the most beautiful thing I can tell you. I didn't say anything. I dried the plate. And I cried. Finally, quietly, the kind of crying that isn't about sadness so much as relief. The release of something you've been holding so tightly for so long that you've forgotten what it felt like to put it down. Grandma didn't say anything else. She just kept washing. And let me. Marcus texted 17 days later. No grand apology. No long message. Hey, hope you're doing all right. Let me know if you ever need anything. I stared at it for a long time. I thought about everything I could say. Every true and sharp and deserved thing I could have typed back. Then I wrote. I'm good. Better than I've been in a long time, actually. Sent it. Put my phone down. And meant every single word. I still don't have a job title. I still don't have a salary that would impress anyone at a family dinner. What I have is this. I wake up in the morning and I recognize myself. After 2 years of slowly disappearing, I recognize myself again. And somewhere I am completely certain, Grandma already knew that was coming. She always did.